Hey everybody, it is Aaron from Aaron Tunes Studio, and today's video goes out to every guitar player out there who owns a bass so that they can cut bass tracks on all their recordings. I'm one of those guys, and I've been doing it for a long time, and it took a long time for me to learn how to not sound like a guitar player when I played bass. So I'm going to give you a few tips for that. Hopefully you'll find this stuff valuable. The first and most obvious one is if you come from a rock background, you're a guitar player, you've most likely played with a pick. And you can play a bass with the pick. Tons of very famous and successful songs have been recorded by bass players who used a pick. But kind of the method that bass players look to as being better or whatever is using your fingers. And that's because it sounds different. When you play a pick, you get a sharper attack. When you play with your fingers, you get a round attack. So there's two ways that you can play: with a pick, with your fingers if you want a rounder attack, or another way that I see, well, really only one bass player that I can think of off the top of my head playing is with his thumb, and that's Sting. Sting plays like this with his thumb. Now, when I record bass parts, I typically use my thumb. I find it easier, and I don't know if it's because I'm a guitar player and so I'm used to that, having my thumb there to pick with, but I just feel I can keep time better when I'm using my thumb. That's how I will typically pick a song when I'm recording with. I don't have anything so complex that I need to be using fingers. Sometimes I'll use my fingers, but most often I use my thumb. You get the same round tone as fingers, but I just find that my timing is better. So there are those ways. There's also another way, and that is, slapping, popping, which is a valid way to play bass. I just really haven't found a place for it in my music. I kind of look at slapping and popping as the equivalent on bass to what shred is on guitar, which isn't to diminish it. It's just, I don't know, it just doesn't have a place in my music, but it is another way to play, and it takes a long time to learn to do that. So anyway, there's that. Another physical difference is with your fretting hand. If you're a guitar player, you typically play using the tips of your fingers, or you'll bar things by rolling your index finger backwards and barring that chord. On a bass, you want to use your finger pads. The strings are a lot bigger, obviously, and it's a lot more of a kind of a slidey feel when you're playing bass than guitar. And so you fret with your finger pads, not your fingertips. Now, going to the music side, one of the biggest giveaways that I hear where you go, oh yeah, that's a guitar player playing bass, is when the bass just follows the roots of whatever chords the guitar player is playing, which that can be an effective bass line, and it's been used a million times on a lot of successful songs, but it's not the most interesting bass line or the most appropriate bass line all the time. So get out of this mindset that you're just playing the root of whatever the guitar is playing, and instead try and create a sub-melody, some melodic line underneath all the rest of the music that supports it and emphasizes the chords that it needs to emphasize, but also creates this passageway or this path. It creates a path between chords. So, if you're going from C to G, create a path, a sub-melody that walks you from one to the other, rather than just changing notes when the guitar changes chords. And I was trying to think of a good song that kind of was a good example of this, and the best one that I could think of was the chorus from Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi. And the sub-melody in that is just killer. It goes like this. That is a great sub-melody, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Now, you don't always have to have that much movement going on. A song that kind of incorporates hanging out on the root and a little bit of a sub-melody would be like Crazy Train. There you've got a little bit of both. But sometimes, sometimes you do just want to hang out on the root, like Running with the Devil by Van Halen. Bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum. So, hanging out on the root can be effective too. The point is, don't just automatically assume that you're just going to follow the guitar chords. There's a lot of really interesting stuff to be found if you move beyond that mindset. Another kind of mindset thing for playing bass is you have to lock in with the kick drum. The kick drum and the bass are almost like one instrument. In fact, I would say that the bass is the melodic voice of the kick drum. You learn to work together with the kick drum. That's why so often you'll see bass players standing next to the drummer. And so a lot of times you're going to be playing a note on the bass at the same time that the drummer hits that kick. And it's not always the case, obviously, especially if you're creating a sub-melody that will lead the listener from one chord to the other. You're going to be playing in between the kicks. So don't think that it's like a 1-to-1 ratio, because it's not. You just have to think in terms of you're locking in with that kick drum. And if you're writing songs and programming drums or something, you want to create a kick drum pattern that locks in with the bass. The point is that they work together. The bass gives the kick drum a melodic voice. So that's another way that you can think as a bass player. Now, if you want to give a song a little bit of a groove, there's an old saying that goes, if you want a song to groove, give the 2 and the 4 to the drummer. That's because the snare is most often playing on 2 and 4. So if you can leave 2 and 4 open for that snare to pop through, it just helps the song groove a little bit. And that leads me to my final point, which is leave space. A good bass part is defined as much by the space it leaves as the space that it fills up. Make holes in the music where you can hear that bass and then it pulls back. And it creates kind of an ebb and flow that gives the song some momentum. So you can see that there are a few physical differences in the way you play, but the biggest difference between playing guitar and playing bass is the way you approach the instrument. It's a different mindset, and you have different objectives that you're trying to accomplish. Now, of course, there are exceptions for all this. If you asked Billy Sheehan what he thought of this video, he might have some different opinions. And I mean, that's the beauty of music, right? But these are my tips, the things that I've learned that have helped me write better bass lines as a guitar playing bassist. And I hope that you found some value in all this. I hope it helps you write better bass lines. And as always, remember that music is its own reward. And I will see you next time.